Welcome to episode 3 of our book club, where we read Dr. Feldenkrais' Awareness Through Movement, the chapter on what is good posture. So far, we've learned that Dr. Feldenkrais contested the idea of straightness, the idea of verticality, and aesthetic concept of posture. He mentioned in the last paragraph an important idea of the job of the skeleton canceling gravity. Let's read on. Let's see what we can learn more. Paragraph number 5, called Relaxation, a concept that is often misunderstood. Let us look at the lower half of the jaw. Most people keep their mouths closed when they are not speaking, eating, or doing something else with it. What keeps the lower half of the jaw drawn up against the upper half? If the relaxation that has now become so fashionable were the correct condition, the lower jaw would hang down freely, the mouth remain wide open. But this ultimate state of relaxation is found only among individual-born idiots or in cases of paralyzing shocks. Not nice words. It is important to understand how an essential part of the body, such as the jaw, can be in this permanent state of being held up, supported by the muscles that work ceaselessly while we are awake, yet we do not sense that we are doing anything to hold up our jaw. In order to let our jaw drop freely, we actually have to learn to inhibit the muscles involved. If you try to relax the lower jaw until its own weight opens the mouth fully, you will find that it is not easy. When you have succeeded, you will observe that there are also changes in the expression of the face and in the eyes. It is likely that you will discover at the end of this experiment that your jaw is normally shut too tightly. Perhaps you will also discover the origin of this excessive tension. Watch for the return of the tension after the jaw has been relaxed, and you will at least discover how infinitely little man knows about his own powers and about himself in general. The results of this small experiment can be important for a sensible person, more important even than attending to his business, because his ability to make a livelihood may improve when he discovers what is reducing the efficiency of most of his activities. By the way, we made a lot of progress in terms of language, right? The insensitive language of 1960s, 1970s. Here in this paragraph, Feldenkrais criticized, pokes fun a little bit of the trend of relaxation. I find positioning of this paragraph slightly unfortunate, because in the previous paragraph he spoke about the importance of a skeleton supportive or canceling gravity, and making point that if the skeleton is not supported, then muscles have to contract to compensate for it. And then right after that, he states that muscles need to be contracted. So for some readers, it may be slightly confusing. Do muscles need to work? Don't they? What's the ideal? For me, there are two very important points here. One is how little we know about ourselves, that we can have in our body prolonged ongoing contraction without any sense of it. The second is that many of those tensions are excessive. So if we look at our jaw, that is true. And if you look at the skeleton, the skull, the jaw or the mandible is moving away from the maxilla, the upper jaw, during the act of opening and closing. And the weight of the jaw, if not countered by muscles, it will make the mouth open. You can even see here in the model we have the spring underneath that keeps the mouth shut. If I remove that spring, the mouth would open and it will hang. In my practice, I very often assess the state of the musculature of the jaw, namely masseter muscles and temporalis muscles, in a way of manually opening and closing person's mouth. And through that, I find out how much tension or how much excessive tension there is in the system. You can test it yourself. Put your hands on your chin and very gently, with power from your hand, not from the muscles of the jaw, open and close your mouth. And feel how your jaw yields to your hand. So often I find that the person's jaw will be shut tightly, so even if I pull down, there will be no response. So for yourself, open and close your mouth with your hand and see how your jaw, your mandible, yields to the passive force of your hand. You may find it striking that the tension is there, that you didn't know about it. So I find this quite informative. So therefore, the point that Dr. Feldenkrais is trying to make here is that some muscle tension is necessary and desired, but it shouldn't be excessive. It should just meet the need, the demand of function. Let's keep on reading. Paragraph number 6, called No Awareness of Action in Anti-Gravity Muscles. The lower jaw is not the only part of the body that does not drop down as far as it can. The head itself does not drop forward. Its center of gravity is well in front of the point at which it is supported by the spine. It lies approximately between the ears. For the face and front part of the skull are heavier than the back of the head. Despite this structure, the head does not fall forward. So obviously there must be some organization in the system that keeps it up. If we relax the muscles at the back of the neck completely, the head will drop to the lowest possible position with the chin resting on the breastbone. Yet there is no consciousness of effort while these muscles at the back of the neck are contracted to hold up the head. If you finger the calf muscles at the back of the leg at about the middle, while standing, you will find them strongly contracted. If they were entirely relaxed, the body would fall forward. In good posture, the bones of the lower leg are at a small angle forward from the vertical, and the contraction of the muscles of the calves prevents the body from falling forward on its face. So here too, I'd like to show you our skull and the place where your atlas, your first vertebra of your neck, is supporting the occiput, is in place where my fingers are. And if I let go, you will see the head tipping, because these joints are a little bit behind the center of mass of the head. And we find that when people fall asleep on the train, when we are tired, when we are watching television and we had a long day, our head starts to nod forward and down. And that's what happens when these muscles at the back, at the nape of the neck, are starting to relax. And the calf muscles help us maintain uprightness. And it's not only calf muscles, but also muscles of our toes. In fact, did you know that strength of toe flexors is one of the main predictor of people being at risk of fall? That you can detect risk of fall by checking strength of your toe flexors, because those muscles right us back up. If you start to fall forward, the contraction of the muscles of the toes counters it, and you return back to the state of equilibrium. If those muscles are too weak, then your center of mass is coming forward and there is no force to counter it, and then we are at the risk. We have to step forward actually, rather than right ourselves with our toes. Let's read on. We stand without knowing how. We are thus not aware of any effort or activity in the muscles that work against gravity. We become aware of the anti-gravity muscles only when we either interrupt or reinforce them. That is, when the voluntary change is made in clear awareness. The permanent contraction that is normally present before any intentional act is done is not registered by our senses. The electrical impulses, which derive from different sources within the nervous system, are involved. One group of these produces deliberate action. The other group causes contraction in the anti-gravity muscles until the work done by them exactly balances the pull of gravity. He mentions in this paragraph that we can only become aware of the work of those anti-gravity muscles if we increase their contraction or if we try to relax those muscles volitionally. So modulation of what they're normally doing gives us a window of opportunity of becoming aware of the working of these muscles. He mentions here two different places in our nervous system, in our brain and the central nervous system, that control deliberate action versus an involuntary action without our conscious awareness. When I work with clients, my ultimate goal is to create a better control over movement and posture, but not through conscious mechanisms, but through automatic pilot. Because this is a true conservation of energy. If you have to think every time you get up from a chair, every time you stand or walk, this is inefficient. It costs too much energy. It requires too much brain work. We want better action to be automatic, spontaneous, without conscious will. He finishes this paragraph with a sentence that says the anti-gravity muscles, until the work done by them exactly balances the pull of gravity. Now, we could challenge it. So this is an ideal state, right? But yet he mentions that so often we overdo. We create too much tension in our jaw, in our neck, in our muscles of the back or abdomen, where we contract too much. So yes, in the ideal world, the non-volitional, out of our awareness mechanisms will balance our system to such perfection, then my neck, for example, should be contracted just right to counter the fall forward of my head. However, we know this ideal is very infrequent. The most common is actually overuse of muscular contraction, too much tension. Let's wrap up with one more paragraph, short one. The upright posture is maintained by an old part of the nervous system. A study of the limbs and parts of the body such as shoulders, eyes, eyelids, and so on shows that their muscles are constantly working, work that is not sensed and is not due to any conscious effort. How many people are aware, for instance, that their eyelids are raised and can feel their weight? This weight is felt only in the moments between wakefulness and sleep, when it suddenly becomes difficult to keep one's eyes open. That is, when a sudden effort is needed to do so. As long as we are upright, our eyelids will not fall despite their weight. The upright position and all that it involves is organized by a special section of the nervous system, which performs a great deal of complicated work of which no more than a hint penetrates into our conscious mind. This section is one of the oldest in evolution of the human species. It is certainly older than the voluntary system, and it's also physically placed below it. So here he gives another example of a place where we completely unaware, just our calves, our jaw muscles or muscles of the nape of the neck, our eyelids. So he divides here actions that require awareness, volitional act, acting by decision. For example, I can decide to turn my head and I'm paying attention to it, or automatically I hear a noise and my head turns. These are two different acts governed and controlled by different parts of the nervous system, and this involuntary automatic pilot is much lower in the nervous system. It's located, it's placed deeper underneath the cortex. And here too, from my practice with clients, my goal again is to train structures that are called CPGs, central pattern generators. These are the generators of pattern of movement that we do thousands of times every day, that we've been doing all our lives. Walking is, for example, ideally activity that relies heavily on CPGs, central pattern generators. Of course, we can override them with the higher centers of the nervous system. For example, I can decide to walk with my toes inward, pigeon-toed, or I can decide to walk with one foot out and left foot in. I can decide to carry myself taller or move my arms, but these are all volitional acts that are governed on the surface of our nervous system and can override the older patterns. But still, the quality of your life mostly depends on how well that older brain, that older nervous system controls your posture and movement. Now the question is, how can we train that? How can we make a difference, not through volition of me trying to be different than I am, but how can we structure training, practice, so the older part of the nervous system have a chance to modulate and change their working. Until the next time, I hope you found these few paragraphs interesting. Onwards and upward.